my chair is just not getting, the feedback that I need. If so, you want to watch today's episode of From ABD to PhD Show, because we're going to talk about 3 of the key attributes to being a successful dissertation writer. I want to say thank you for tuning into this episode. I'm Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation, where our goal is to demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend their dissertation in 1 year or less. Today's episode of From ABD to PhD Show is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program. It's a coaching experience with the goal to help you write and defend your dissertation within the next year. So if you're a doctoral student and you know that you have the skill and you know you have something to contribute to the body of work in your area, but you just haven't had the success quite yet in your doctoral program as you've been writing your dissertation, and know you could benefit from structure, accountability, support, and just feedback that will help propel you forward. If that's you, then you can apply to work with us in our Velocity Coaching Program. To learn more about our program, you can visit www.velocitydissertation.com. Or if you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere else online, you can go ahead and scan the QR code that is here on your screen to learn more about our program and to complete a consultation application so you can hear from our team more about the program. And before we get into today's content, as always, I got to thank our other partner, HBCU Smart TV. They stream our episodes of From AB to PhD Show on their platform as well. If you want to learn more about HBCU Smart TV, they have great children's content. They have great content related to HBCUs. You can learn more about HBCU Smart TV at www.hbcusmarttv.com. And they also have an app that streams our episodes on a Roku device. So if you have a Roku device, just type in HBCU Smart TV, and then you can go ahead and download it from there. So today's episode, I want to talk about all things writing, because we just know that one of the key components of getting out of the doctoral journey is being able to write. We just had a call with someone interested in our program today at the time of this recording, and the person was saying, I recognize that I don't feel like I'm a good writer and I don't really enjoy writing, but I recognize that in order to finish a dissertation, I have to be able to write. And I would say for a lot of us, you're going to have to write to get through this process. So why not get the skill set and why not get these strategies that are proven that you can implement now so that you can move this process forward? So on today's episode, I'm going to share 3 key attributes to helping you become a better dissertation writer. And so the first key attribute to becoming a more successful dissertation writer is the idea that you actually have to practice and exercise your writing muscle daily. And just to give an analogy, right? So my background, for those of you who don't know, I actually played college basketball at Lynchburg College, now University of Lynchburg. And so as part of, being a basketball player and a student athlete, when, you have your practice, let's say you practice 2 hours every day during the season, right? But also in addition to the practice as a team, we had what was called personal improvement time, PIT. And we had PIT that was every day, or you had certain days during the week that you had PIT time. Usually mine was like from 12 to 1 in between classes. And the goal of PIT time was to get up at least 500 shots, because we knew that in practice was one thing, right? But we also need that in time to improve ourselves as individual athletes. And so I take that same analogy and same approach to actually becoming a better dissertation writer, is that we have to practice our writing muscle. We found that from our clients that work with us, students who write more consistently finish quicker, because I found that, like a jump shot, you can improve with repetition. And with writing, your writing muscle improves the more you work on it. And you have to build it up. For some of us, the challenge becomes that we just don't write enough. So it's hard to get into the routine of writing because we just haven't made it a consistent practice. And literally, I would say I wrote my whole dissertation. So I wrote it in 7 months, start to finish, including collecting my data. And the writing component of it, right? I only would write from maybe 1 to 2 hours a day, but it was consistent, at least 5 days a week. I need that consistent time to engage in the practice of writing. Some of you are way better writers than I was when I was a student. So I get that your time might not be as much as I had to put in, but you'll figure out what that sweet spot is in terms of time. Because by exercising your writing muscle, you're going to build up not only the stamina to write, but you're going to build up your confidence. And I find that for a lot of students, the trick to becoming a better writer is just building up your confidence in writing. Because some of us have had all of these negative experiences, including myself, with feedback from professors and all these things that can impact our writing confidence. So we have to consider that. Exercising our writing muscle will help build our confidence. And then you can learn tools that help complement your writing style. So some of you all have different ways that you approach writing. Some of you all might be the folks that like dictate your writing first. Renee and I were just talking about that and how it doesn't work for me because I got like really have to think about it in my head and then write it out and then refine later. But for some of y'all, you got to figure out what does that process look like for you. But being able to practice writing helps you to figure out what the strategy works best for you and what's most comfortable for you in your area. And this is something that's an exploration that you have to go through before. If you're struggling as a writer, part of the problem is if I looked at what time do you spend on writing, it's probably not that much. And so there are different components of writing, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but the actual process, like typing the words out, this is really important because we got to get the ideas from up here onto the paper. And then at that point, we can work with it. But if it's not on the paper, it's not happening and that dissertation is not getting done. So this is something you got to consider. So the first key attribute to becoming a successful dissertation writer is to practice your writing muscle every day. Now, the second key attribute to becoming a more successful dissertation writer is that you have to then understand how to process feedback. Gotta tell y'all, feedback is one of those things that will happen and it has to happen for you to finish. You got to get feedback from your faculty members. I know for many of us, we don't like getting that feedback. Our hope, and I hear from a lot of our clients sometimes like, I wrote that thing and I spent X amount of hours on it and I submitted and they had all this feedback. That's what you want. You getting feedback is getting you one step closer to finishing. So why not, take that opportunity to receive that feedback? But you got to know how to process it. So I'm going to give you a way to think through this process in order to process the feedback. And so when you get feedback from a professor, what I want you to do is a couple of things. First, I want you to breathe a little bit, just woosah, because you're going to be upset that you got all this red ink or track changes, whatever you got on your document, right? Second, I want you to read all the feedback in its entirety, because what will happen, you'll start to notice potentially that some of the feedback overlaps in many places. So probably one error or mistake that you made in one place probably applies to a number of different places in your document. Then once you read their work, their feedback, if you find that the feedback is kind of like deflated you in terms of writing, I want you to actually take a 24-hour break. So I want you to come back to this document tomorrow. Take a break, do something non-dissertation related. Then when you come back the next day, and remember the next day, not the next week, not the next month, the next day. And so when you come back the next day, what I want you to then to do is to look at the feedback again. And now we're going to organize it. I want you to start taking all the feedback, the things they want you to do. And in a document somewhere, I want you to actually organize it by the actual section of the document. Because what ends up happening in a lot of, let's say, dissertation chapters, let's take chapter 1, for instance. There's a lot of different sections. You have your background of the research problem. You have your theoretical framework, conceptual framework, research questions, significance, whatever. You may find that a lot of the feedback, is all centered on your framework. Knowing and having it organized might help you to fine-tune things. And maybe one thing that you fix in your framework section actually then will allow you to fix something in another section in the chapter. But the only way to see the feedback and being able to organize it is to have it in some type of format where you know exactly where it is in the document and you can start to see trends in your writing. This is something I do to this day when I write for peer review publication, because sometimes there are a lot of, we get multiple reviews, so same thing like you would get from, maybe feedback from your chair and some committee members, and you like, what do I do with all this? And maybe they have, conflating or contradicting feedback. And so the only way you make sense of and understand that it's contradictory is to put it in some type of document and organize it. And so this is something that we teach our clients on, and we give them the templates and everything to do within the Velocity coaching program, because we know that it's just important to be able to organize and gather what you write. Then what you're going to do is once you organize, you guys are going to address the comments. When you go through doing the comments, you're going to write in your document, how did you address each comment? And then lastly, which a lot of students forget, is that once you're done with this, I want you to, when you submit the document back to your chair or whoever is for, saying that you addressed the feedback, you're going to submit the document along with the letter saying where and how you address all those pieces of feedback. I promise you start doing this, your chair will be very impressed and really will see that you're taking time and attention to really improve as an academic writer. And so this is something I want you to consider, on how to, understand and process feedback. And so that is the second attribute to become a successful dissertation writer, is to understand how to process feedback. So if you need to, go back and rewind this. You're watching on YouTube. First things first, hit the like and subscribe button. Then go back and rewind this. Listen to that part again on how to process the feedback, develop your system, come back to this video when you need to, because it's going to be really important to develop these processes early and often. And if you're someone that says, hey, I want actually some more support, I want, some help from coaches to actually look at my work and really give me that feedback to push it forward, because I'm not getting the feedback that I need at my university, we would welcome you to apply to work with us in our Velocity Coaching Program. You can learn more about our program at www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn or somewhere else. So again, if you need that help, our Velocity program will get you to the finish line. And so with that, we were talking about in today's episode, key attributes to being a successful dissertation writer. And so I want to share with you the third key attribute is that you have to understand that there are different modes to writing, and you shouldn't put them together all the time. And so let me explain this to you. So in addition to being a basketball player, my background is actually as a music educator. So I was a music teacher for a number of years. My major was instrumental music education, and I was a trumpet major, but played the piano. You can play a little bit of everything, right? And so I like to produce music. And so one of the things I started to recognize when I was producing music is that there are times when I needed to be creative, and there are times when I actually need to produce the music. And so those are two different modes. And so I applied that same concept to writing. And to give you an example, I just say that in writing, there are two distinct modes. There is the creator mode of writing and the producer mode of writing. And the analogy I always give for this is just think about, as a creative, think about Michael Jackson. And as a producer, think about Quincy Jones. So if you know about Michael Jackson, some of his albums, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad, Quincy Jones was a producer for most of those records, right? And so they had this relationship. But there were times where Michael had to be the creative and actually go in the booth and sing and record. And then there were times when Quincy had to take Michael's recordings and clean it up. The same process applies to writing. When you are in the creation mode of writing, your only job is to create. And that means take the thoughts out of your head and put them onto your Word document. So when you're in the creation mode, you're just typing and writing. You're not concerned at this point, like, does this all flow? Does this all make sense? That's not the purpose of this stage. This stage is to get the ideas out of your head. We got to do that first. What I want you to do is when you're in the creation mode of writing, do not, please, in each writing session, do not go back and reread what you wrote previously. Because what's going to happen is you're going to look at that previous writing. You're going to spend 45 minutes trying to correct what you wrote previously. Now you're burnt out. And then when you come to this new writing session, you wasted time, and then you realize, I don't feel like writing, and you move on to something else. We see it happen all the time. What I want you to do is to not reread anything you wrote previously. At the end of every writing session, when you're in the creation mode, what I want you to do is leave a note, a comment for yourself on your document that says what your thoughts were as you were finishing up and what you want to focus on during your next writing session. That will really help you, so that only thing you're doing when you come back to sit at your writing session the next day is to look at that note that you left for yourself in the comments and then move on and actually start writing. So that's the creation mode of writing. Now the producing mode of writing, what that looks like is now we're going to take that creation, and our only job here is to fine tune, edit, do all those things, get it into a polished product. Oftentimes we try to do both of the creation and production at the same time, and it just makes the writing process really convoluted, and it becomes very frustrating. When you're producing your writing, you're editing, you're moving things around, you're looking at things again. You might be adding more on, you might be taking stuff away. All that refinement process happens during the production mode of writing. But here's a catch when you're doing your production mode of writing. Don't spend so much time, trying to get it perfect. Your goal is to get it done. And I talk about in my book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation. I talk about in the book that you should focus on what we call the 80% rule. So if you're someone who don't have the book, I'll put it on here on the QR code on the screen to learn more and grab a copy of the book if you're interested in getting the book. But in the book, in one of the chapters, I talk about the 80% rule. And essentially what I'm saying is that your writing, your faculty will always have feedback for you. So your goal is not to get it perfect. When you're in this production mode, you're not trying to get things perfect. You're just trying to get those ideas refined 80% enough. And because when you turn it into your chair or committee, they're going to give you feedback. That's literally their job. That's what we get paid to do, is give you feedback. So let them give you the feedback. So don't worry about it being perfect when you're trying to produce it. You just want a high quality product, of course. So I always want high quality. Like I don't do nothing with my scholarship that's not high quality, but you just know it's never going to be perfect. And that's okay. And so when you're thinking through this, you just got to be able to engage in that production mode and then get it off your desk and onto your chair or whoever else you need to have it, to look at it for review. But those are the three. That last attribute was that the idea that you have to understand there are two distinct modes of writing. You have the creation mode and the production mode of writing. I mentioned in today's episode, I'm going to give you three, and I talked about three, but I want to throw in a bonus one because I think this is another strategy that if you implement will make things a lot easier and help you become a more successful dissertation writer. And one of the things, the attribute that I want you to learn, I want you to be able to apply what I call the REAP approach to academic writing. REAP. So it's an acronym I created, and I'm going to explain what each of the letters stand for. But remember, REAP is how you're going to approach your academic writing. So the first thing, in order to become a successful dissertation writer, you have to read. So that's the R, the read. There's nothing that a faculty member can do in order to help you with that part. That is what you are literally getting your doctorate for. You're reading so you understand all the literature in your area so that you know that your dissertation can make a contribution to that scholarly discourse. You got to read. That's number one. And for me, what ended up happening when I was a struggling writer, I used to read in my field. I was my doctorate in education, but I would read in sociology, anthropology, engineering, all these fields because I understand academic writing. And so reading is really important. That's the foundation. Then from there, which I mentioned earlier, is that we have to exercise our writing muscle. So the E, exercise your writing muscle. Now from there, you have to then, the A, accept feedback that you get from your chair and committee. You have to accept it. It just is what it is. And part of you have to embrace it as well and then work with it and figure out how you can, address their feedback. And then the last part, I think a lot of us, when we engage in academic writing, we try to make it very complex. But the P in the REAP approach is to practice and use a playground-friendly writing approach. So we'll go for, write with playground-friendly writing approach. And why I learned this, my daughter, I watched her play at the playground, and they would communicate so easily with each other. Not all the words made sense, but they had a way to communicate. And when I was a doctoral student, I remember one of my professors, he wrote on my paper, he said, Ramon, good ideas, but you're out complexing yourself with the writing. So what he was signaling to me was like, oh, I just got to make this simpler. And I found that the simpler I got with my writing, using this playground-friendly writing approach, the easier writing it got and the better the feedback I got. Because I find that when you don't get clear feedback, sometimes when the writing is very unclear and all over the place, it's hard as a faculty member to give the student clear feedback because we don't know where to take this because it's not presented to us in the most clear way. And I find that a lot of times we're trying to use all this jargon and things when we could just say something very simple. I just had this conversation with a student of mine. I teach a first-year doc seminar class in my program, and we were talking about their research question. And they had all this academic language in the research question. I was like, what do you really mean? And they said, oh, I mean this, and this. I was like, put that in the question. Your research question can be so simple. And so this is some of the things. And the student mentioned back to me, he's like, oh, I didn't think about having my research question just be so straightforward and simple. But these are the things that you have to do and consider as you are trying to improve as an academic writer. And remember the REAP. R, read, and read some more. E, exercise your writing muscle every day if you can. A, accept and embrace feedback from your professors and colleagues. And then P, practice a playground-friendly writing approach. If you apply the REAP approach to improving your academic writing, you will be off to the races. And so I would love to hear from you in the comments, wherever you're watching this, on YouTube, wherever. What was a takeaway that you have from today's episode? What's something that stuck with you? Because I look forward to hearing more from you. And if you're someone that like, hey, I like this and I want to get some more support, I would welcome you to apply to work with us. This is something like, if you imagine you get value out of what we're doing here just from this episode and these episodes we have on like our YouTube channel, imagine what it's like actually being in our program. Like we got folks that are finishing, folks are knocking this thing out and getting their dissertations done. And just being part of this community is going to be something that I know a lot of you might need as you're trying to figure out how do I get out of the dissertation process. And so if you want that community of scholars, you want that accountability structure, you want a model proven process, a curriculum that helps bring you through this process, then I would invite you to apply with us in the Velocity Coaching Program. You can scan the QR code that's here on your screen, or you can go to www.velocitydissertation.com. And before I wrap up, I want to say thank you to HBCU Smart TV, as always, for streaming these episodes on the platform. So if you want to interested more in getting our past content, you also can check out HBCU Smart TV on your Roku devices. But please let me know if there's questions that resonate with you, things you still want to learn more about. Drop them in the comments. That will be future content that we have on the shows. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. Again, my name is Dr. Ramon Goings. I'm founder of Done Dissertation, where our goal is to help demystify the dissertation process so that you can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. Thank you again for watching From ABD to PhD show, and I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode. Until then, let's get those dissertations done. Have a great week.